Hi, this is Robert with Cruzbike, and today we're going to be going over a rear rack installation on the 2020 S40 and also an under seat rack installation on the same bike. For the first portion of the video, we will go with a rear rack installation. With the rack, you should have a set of 4 bolts, and you will need a 4mm Allen. Here we have the 4mm Allen from the Cruzbike toolkit. Your rack should look like this, with the upper arms extended nearly all the way. Have them a little bit loose so you can move them back and forth. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to carefully stretch the arms of the rack very gently around, because we're going to be using the lower holes here and the upper holes on the seat stay. So here we're going to very carefully, avoiding scratching the frame, maneuver the lower part of the rack down over the mounting holes, and then we will insert our bolts in there. I highly recommend putting a little grease on the threads of the bolts, and then we will maneuver the upper arms in place. It helps if you have the arm attachments on the rack itself just a little bit loose, makes it easier to maneuver the rack and make it nice and level. If it's hard to move the rack up and down, simply snug the bolts or loosen them as necessary. Make sure all of the bolts are inserted. Make sure they're nice and snug on all 4. And once complete, tighten the bolts holding the upper arms. Make sure the rack's nice and level. The arms will be pretty extended near the end, but that's okay as long as everything's nice and secure. And there we have the installation of the rear rack for the 2020 S40. Alright, let's go over an underseat rack installation. For the underseat rack, we'll be using the holes directly under the seat and on the back part of the chainstay. Your rack should have 2 sides, a middle U-shaped piece, 2 connecting brackets, and 4 extension arms, and 2 of them have spacers. It's important to know that the ones with the spacers go on the front, and the other ones that have no spacers go on the back holes. The first step is assembling the rack itself. So we're going to take the U-shaped sides, we're going to slide the clamps on either side with the bolts on the inside. Note the little cutout and the bottom should be facing the bottom of the U, so the TerraCycle label will be legible when it's hanging on the side of the bike. We'll insert our sides. We'll give them a little bit of a snug for now. Insert the other side. The little tabs at the bottom are for your pannier hook, so that's why it has the little cutout on the bottom. We want to make sure both the U connecting bracket and the sides are nice and even. Make sure everything is nice and lined up straight, and we'll give it a little snug. All of these pieces should be lined up parallel just like that. It isn't super critical at this point if all of these parts are not super tightened down, because we're going to be wanting to move them around a little bit as we assemble the rest of the rack. Now we will take our 2 brackets. We're going to find the ones with the spacer, and here we're going to use the middle hole, and these go on the front holes directly under the seat. So we'll pass the bolt through the mount, through the spacer, and then into the bike itself. We don't need these to be super tight quite yet. We just want the bolts to be inserted all the way in, but not completely tight. Then we're going to insert our underseat rack into the brackets on the lower portion of the brackets here. And we will temporarily tighten these bolts down just enough to keep the rack from falling out of the brackets. Now we can install our rear brackets. Our rear brackets, as you can see, will be facing the opposite direction in order for us to level the rack. Here we'll do the front one first. We will position it with the hole that makes the rack as level as possible. Here in this case I'm going to use the middle hole. Now the variation in holes on these brackets allows you to position the rack either higher or lower, which might depend on the type of panniers you use. If you have panniers that have a tall top, then you might want to position your rack lower, and vice versa. If you have very short panniers, you might be able to tuck it up a little bit tighter under the seat for a little bit more ground clearance. Once we have everything in place and everything nice and evened out, we can start tightening all of our bolts. This is a good opportunity to check to make sure all of the sides are parallel and even, and then we can go through and snug down all of our bolts. And there you have it. That is the installation of the underseat rack. It is possible to use the underseat rack and the rear rack together. If you do, simply insert the back part of the underseat rack into the same holes as the rear rack. And here I am going to demonstrate, if we move these brackets to a different set of holes, we can raise the height of the rack a little bit more. Allows you to use slightly longer bags. And there you have it. There is the installation of the rear rack and the underseat rack. Thank you for watching, and if you have any comments or questions, please email us at support@cruzbike.com. Thank you.